They teach you that you need to go to college, you need to be a doctor, you need to be a banker, you need to do something other than go work with your hands and be a landscaper. I listened and didn't do that for several years, and I took a job with the highway department. I think it was 2016. I went out on my own, took a leap of faith and started my own business, and I've never looked back. I learned everything myself. I was self-taught. God has a purpose and God has a will for every person. And if you're doing what you're supposed to do, God's going to give you the ability to do it and do it well.
Well, welcome back to another episode of the Cost of Doing Business podcast. We are in North Carolina today. I have Etienne, our CTO at SynkedUP, in with us. He's behind the camera making faces at you. And we're in the home of Jason Gwaltney. Probably my first memory from you, Jason. I don't remember the H&A conversation. I don't remember that, but I do remember Gene calling me last summer sometime saying, hey, you need to talk to this guy. And then we saw you at Contractor Summit, of course, but thanks for having us here at your house.
It's good to have you guys here.
It's great to appreciate you hosting us, and look forward to the time we're gonna get to spend together and getting into a good conversation on the podcast. To kick things off, can you give us a bit of an idea, like what your business looks like, your team size, what your kind of like your ideal favorite project size, and what it is that is?
Team size, we're typically myself and 3 other guys. I am still 100% in the field with the guys. One day I would like to change that and maybe get out of the field just a little bit, just to try to make a little bit better future for it, because nobody can stack block for 40 years.
That's true.
That's our typical size of our company, of me running 3 guys. Project that we would like to do every time, my favorite, just me, because it's the easiest for me to take guys out on it and do it and not have to feel like I have to be there for everything to be happening, is just your general like landscape renovation of someone's home. And it's pretty popular in our area just because so many houses are older houses that people have bought them. You know, as an elderly person had lived there and passed away, and now a younger generation's taken it and wanted to do something new with it. And it's been really good to us that way. We'll typically go in, tear all the shrubbery out, put in new shrubbery, try to upsell a paver sidewalk, outdoor lighting, things like that.
Yeah, outdoor lighting is a good addition to that kind of stuff.
It's been good to us. We can typically take those projects and make it a $15,000 job. There's not a whole lot involved in it. It's a pretty quick 1-2 day job a lot of times.
Yeah. A lot of revenue per day.
That's my favorite, probably just because I see it on paper of that looks good, as opposed to, you know, we can do some water features. I enjoy doing water features. Sometimes with that stuff, with us just starting out on it, you know, your man hours might beat you up just a little bit by looking at it and saying, well, we took a little bit of extra time on that, things like that. But we typically do everything installation-wise. We don't do any maintenance other than I still maintain a few yards, just spraying and fertilizing, and we do a lot of mulching. We have a mulch blower, and we do that just as filler work in the
Do you do that on commercial properties, or is it all residential?
We have several commercial properties that we do it on. And it's just kind of been my thing that I bought the blower, and it worked good for us because our winters down here in the South, a lot of times we don't get snow. We just get rain and it stays wet, and we can generally do that even if it's wet. So it's been a good filler schedule thing for us, just because if it's rained yesterday, we can go blow mulch the next day, and it keeps my guys their paycheck every week and makes things still happen.
Yeah. Take us back to the beginning. Like, when did you start? How did you get into business?
Oh, God. I've got a picture of it. I should have got it out. I think I've got it on my desk back there in my office. I grew up on a farm. My mother has always been an avid gardener. When I was a kid, you know, I was thrilled with tractors and things like that. And my dad done a little bit of landscaping just as a part-time gig. Nothing very serious whatsoever. But I always had a little like for that. And when I was a kid, I'd do things like in the yard with my mom, and I'd made a little sign. I didn't know of this until I'd after named the business Gwaltney Landscaping, but I made a little sign, and my mom had dug it out years later, and it was shade tree landscaping. I had a knack for it then. I really enjoyed it then, but you know, growing up in school and stuff, they teach you that you need to go to college, you need to be a doctor, you need to be a banker, you need to do something other than go work with your hands and be a landscaper. I listened and didn't do that for several years, and I took a job with the highway department, and met a guy there that was a really good friend of mine, and he done a lot of new construction seating. And that was pretty much it. He just sewed yards for people. I got involved with that. Me and him started working together a little bit with that. I sold a Camaro that I had, bought a dump truck, and started doing some of that. And then we kind of went our different ways in hopes of me trying to do my own thing. And I worked a full-time job, and I done that, and had a customer ask to plant some trees. I said, I've never done that. He said, well, you'll figure it out. I had a customer ask to plant bushes, and everything that we've done, that I've done, I've had to figure it out. I didn't have the luxury of working for another company, which is probably a good thing for somebody that's never done this kind of work. They need to do that just to learn the ropes of it. But I learned everything myself. I was self-taught. Actually had a customer ask one time, I want a water feature. I'm like, I have never done that. And this was before the glory days of YouTube, of getting to watch a Tussey landscaping video and figure it out. You just had to figure it out, and had a lot of hard lessons that we learned that way.
Yeah.
And I done that for several years, worked a full-time job and done it on my weekends, and we had a lot of time off with work that I could take off to do my own business work, and done that. And I think it was 2016 I went out on my own out of faith. I had prayed about it, and I enjoyed the work, and I liked it a lot better than I did my job. And good Lord directed me in the right way, and I went out, took a leap of faith, and started my own business, and I've never looked back.
And that was Gwaltney's Landscaping when you did that?
Yes, sir.
When you started? Yeah, okay.
It's been Gwaltney Landscaping ever since.
Did you start by yourself, or did you have employees right out of the gate?
I started by myself. Like I said, back to that whole testimony. I mean, everybody told me this: you're a fool. You're quitting a job that's got full benefits and time you can take off anytime you want to. I was like, well, I'm going to do enough and hope that I can do enough just to keep myself busy. Within a couple of months, I had hired an employee and struggled with that. That's something I did for a couple of years, just didn't know my numbers. If that's a synced up pitch, if you want one. I didn't have any clue of what I should charge for things. And I wasn't able to feel like, well, I can probably pay 2 or 3 other guys. I worked for up until probably 4 years ago, just me and one other guy, or 2 guys at times, and just struggled through that thought of, do I make enough money, or do I charge enough to pay somebody? And took a little bit of help from you guys to figure out, well, okay, well, yeah, you can probably pay a couple more people. That's really been a help to me to have other people helping, for sure.
What was going through your mind as you were trying to decide, like, do I go out on my own and do my own thing, like, or stick to this job where everybody else was telling you, like, stay with the benefits and all of that? That's
the tough one, because it was a lot of pressure from other people, this is a good job. I mean, I'd even talked to my own preacher, and he was like, well, that landscaping, what are you going to do in the wintertime? What are you going to do that? And that's a testament back to my own beliefs that God has a purpose and God has a will for every person. And if you're doing what you're supposed to do, God's going to give you the ability to do it and do it well. I'd prayed about it, and it was just clear as day when I got the peace to finally just say, hey, I'm not working here anymore. I'm going to go do what I want to do, what I love to do, and I enjoy to do. Like I said, I've had great luck with it. Even overcoming the boundaries of looking at it that I did not know anything about business. I knew nothing about what I should charge other than what I'd heard other guys were charging per square foot, or hey, this guy's charging that to do it. And I had great success with that. I mean, I still made money, made wages. I didn't make what I made now knowing what to charge, but the Lord took care of me during that time, and I appreciated that. But it's certainly a lot easier when you know what you're supposed to do with it.
Yeah. What do those people say now?
I actually have a customer that he was one of my first customers, a really great guy. And I told him, I was like, I think I'm gonna do this full time. He said, you're a and he said, you shouldn't do that. Don't do that. You've got a good job. And he actually apologized to me a couple years back. He said, Jason, he said, I need to apologize to you. He said, I told you and I discouraged you from going out on your own. And he said, you have done great for yourself. He said, you have the stuff that you post and the things that you guys do. He said, it's impressive. Yeah, I hear that. And then my parents, I think my dad told me when I told him I was doing it, he was like, you better make sure you do good. I mean, you better figure this out. They were, which I understand it. People, it is a different area here. The wintertime does get rough. Not so much that it snows. It just, if it gets wet, people aren't thinking about being outside. But a lot of our biggest stuff goes on during that time because we do have a little bit more time that we can kind of slow down and take our time and be somewhere a little bit longer and upsell the job a little bit more. But yeah, I think a lot of them had to eat crow on it a little bit.
Would you say there's people that should stay with their job versus going out on their own?
Just depends the situation. Some people are better leaders than others. I mean, I've got it in me that was something that I took from my dad. You know, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it, and you're going to do it good. Put all you got into it. And there's a lot of people that I have seen this firsthand that, you know, they went out and they bought the equipment and they've done the thing. The buying the equipment's the easy part, honestly. Building that relationship with customers and building that reputation of if they're going to do it, it's going to be right. That's tough. And there's a lot of guys that, you know, just like I said, I had to learn this stuff. If I would have worked for somebody for 5-10 years in this industry, I had a grading background and I had done some landscape stuff, but I didn't have, you know, as far as a retaining wall or a water feature. You know, nothing's like if I went and worked with you for 5 times building a water feature, that's way more experience than I'm going to gain by me going out here and making a bunch of edge leaks and not doing it right, you know. But I did learn lessons through that, but it could have probably been a lot more gentle of a lesson, learning it on somebody else's time.
What do you think it takes to make it?
Just dirty, nasty, tough. I think that's because I don't care how good you are, I don't care what you do, you're going to meet that customer that's hard to please. I mean, because we've done stuff that would absolutely blow people's mind, and then that customer's still like, I don't like this, I don't like that.
You could be an amazing craftsman or doing what the work that you're doing. It still comes down to the people skills.
Well,
both with your customers and with your team.
Yep. One thing that I tell people often, you know, Jesus Christ was the only perfect man to ever walk this earth, and he didn't make everybody happy. How can you expect me to do it? Yeah, that's the big thing. That's one thing that I've had to learn, because I am a hard charger, and I have to step back a lot of times to tell my guys, look, I don't mean anything by this. I'm not trying to be ugly to you. Just let it go in one ear and out the other, because I'm high strung. When I walk out that door of a morning to go to work, it's not the same joyful person. I mean, I am set on go mode.
On the mission.
And my guys know that I'm wired that way, and they know that I'm going to take care of them at the end of the day. I'm not saying I'm out there like a drill sergeant all day, because I'm not, but they know that we're there. It's the mean business. Yeah. It's not to go play around all day and do this or do that. But yeah, to make it, I think you have to have that work ethic in you that, you know, you just can't stop. It's not good, I don't guess. I've had that conversation with Ben. He said it's hard a lot of times, you know, to just stop. I'm geared that way that if I'm going to go work, I mean, I'm consumed by it when I'm doing it. I mean, I enjoy it that much. I do have my other hobbies that I like to do, but I mean, when it comes to work, it's just like another hobby to me. I enjoy being out there on the job and doing it.
Yeah. What is the most difficult challenge that you've ever encountered in your journey?
I would probably say the same thing that every other landscaper that's watching this is saying, is probably help. But I'm not going to waste time on that, because you already know that's the problem. The hardest one that I probably is that head trash of, you can't charge that, you shouldn't charge that. I mean, I've caught myself trying to do it with my app before, like putting in a quote, and I'm like, I better back them hours back down a little bit and get this price a little bit lower. I'm like, nah, I better not. Because that was a difficult thing for me, because a lot of the people I'd worked for were people that I knew that you didn't want to feel like you were going in there and then think, oh man, he tried to rip me off charging too much or anything like that. I just had to put that stuff aside. The whole business struggle of it probably was my hardest thing, of realizing that yes, you can charge for everything that you're doing, that you shouldn't go out here and say, well, I'm going to donate in putting a couple of these bushes over here on this side just because they're letting me do this other part of it. You know, those same people you're working for, they're not going to go to their job and say, I'll tell you what, I like you, I'm going to work half a week for free just because you let me work here the rest of the week and paid me. So at that point, that was a hard lesson to learn, and a difficult one at that. Between that and the employees, that's probably been the hardest thing. That, well, I mean, the employees haven't been as bad as some outrageous customers. I mean, yeah.
Really?
You get some of those from time to time that, you know, something, like I said, is perfect. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, and it's just strictly that it's not what they wanted.
Is that what it is? It's they told you what they wanted, you delivered that, and then somewhere communication wasn't happening. Either they weren't telling you the truth, or maybe knowingly or unknowingly of what they were envisioning. Or is it a communication thing, or what leads to that?
A lot of times, I don't know. Sometimes, the couple of ones that we've seen in the past is, you know, just, I think a lot of times you're going to get a customer here and there that's going to try to get everything they can out of you for free. I mean, they're going to try to get their driveway pressure washed, even if you didn't drive on the driveway. They're going to try to get their house soft washed. It's things like that. That's stuff that, me being in business and knowing that I got a good number on the job, I can say, okay, we're going to have to go back for a half a day and pressure wash this guy's driveway just to make him happy. Yeah, it's cut into my money a little bit, but it's not cutting into what it would have been if I hadn't estimated it properly. So,
what about on the help side, on the employees side? Like, what have you found, some lessons you've learned or things that have been helpful to you?
One thing that I have learned is you can offer somebody another dollar on the hour, and that's probably not going to make that big of a difference. But if you show up and buy them a pair of boots, you help them out with a bill that you know they've got, or just as simple of, hey, normally we'd pack our lunch or don't even really eat lunch. I mean, I pay my guys through lunch. We normally eat quick and go back at it. I mean, just that simple of, hey guys, get in the truck. We're going down here and we're going to sit down and eat, and I'm buying everybody's lunch. Just things like that. I try to make them realize that I respect them, and I think I get that same respect in turn now, whereas in the past I've had issues with that, because everybody wants to feel, I mean, if you're paying somebody's wages and you're providing them a job and you're spending your time to provide them a job, you want to be respected. I have, had disrespect from some of them in the past, but for the most part, I try to, if we're on the job, I try not to be the one sitting in the skid steer honking the horn, watching them, do something, or pulling up with a pallet of block and asking them to stack them off while I sit in the air conditioning. I'm going to jump out and I'm going to be the first one to work. Necessarily, I don't have to because I am the one paying for them to do it, but I try to treat them a little bit better than I've had in my jobs. I've never had a job, and I've had good jobs that, where somebody came in and said, hey, I tell you what, y'all done good this week. Here's $100. Take your wife out to dinner tonight. I think little gestures like that when it's hot and, we're having to work a little bit longer that day to try to get finished, I think that goes a long way with guys, more so than, well, he's paying me $1 extra an hour. Okay, great. I've forgot about that now that it's 97 degrees outside and it's hot. I try to do that, and that's worked out a little bit better. We've had a little bit better in help here in the last little while.
As you're describing that, what comes to mind for me is being someone that people want to work for. Like being the person that people would enjoy working for. It doesn't matter how good you pay them, how much fun they have doing the work that you do. None of that matters if you are terrible to work with.
Yeah.
Or you don't feel respected or valued, or it just, people leave managers or bosses, not jobs.
I saw one of my guys had posted something on Facebook a little while back, and it was just a thing of, people will do more when they feel appreciated. And I was like, bingo, yeah, they do.
I bet that made you feel good.
And, you want to try to do that for people. I mean, my goal has been in my company, anybody that's watching this or knows you, if they say they haven't stalked Tussey Landscaping, they're lying. But I have tried to mold that same kind of culture that you guys have had with that. Sure. I mean, I've got, my guys have uniforms. We try to all match when we're out on the job site. I look at that standpoint of, if you're going to play for the Atlanta Braves and you get to put that jersey on, you better be proud of it. Some of the help that I have now, they've actually came to me after seeing like our display and saying, man, these guys do nice work. I want to be a part of that. That's a big thing. You see your guys standing back taking videos of things and
that they built,
and they're happy of that.
Right.
You have to have that mentality to survive in landscaping. You cannot have somebody coming to work that just wants a paycheck.
Yeah.
They will never make it. You have to have that person that's like, I'll work a little bit longer if we're going to get this waterfall running because I want to see it running today.
Yeah.
So at that rate, you have to have someone that has that sense of accomplishment of seeing the job done.
Yeah, I think
and wants to see that job done.
Exactly, and I think what's key is having that culture that you are proud, not only of the work you do, but maybe how you keep your truck or how you arrange your materials at your shop. It's always clean or whatever it is. Like taking pride in what it is that you're doing, and once that becomes status quo, like there's a momentum behind that. Yep. And then only anyone new that comes in, they either kind of like check in or check out. Like either like, oh yeah, I want to be proud of what I do, or like if you have that paycheck mentality, it's like they're not going to make it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something that my guys do. I mean, they know that if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right, and that's just the bottom line of it. I mean, they know that part of it, and I've noticed that, and that's one thing that I've tried to get them to have that sense of pride about their work of like, yeah, we're proud of this. And I've seen them take pictures of like the work trucks out there because I had them. We'll take a day here and there and do a little bit of maintenance. Like, hey, let's wash these trucks up and get them cleaned up and stuff. And they're out there taking pictures of it and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, you're taking a little bit of ownership to this too.
Yeah, it makes you feel good.
That's something that I have noticed and trying to do with guys of giving them that ability that they know they're going to get to create something cool. They know they're not going to any junk work. For the most part, we don't have any jobs that we have to go do something that's just like, man, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
It's always like, okay, yeah, that looks great. I'm glad we got to do that.
Yeah. In your journey of business, like, did you have mentors or anything, people that were kind of walking with you or anything at all? What's been the best piece of advice you've been given?
None of us came from a mentor, but I have had mentors. I've got a friend that's in the grading business, and he's pushed me to take on things. He said, dude, you got to be able to do it all. You know, you can't go out here and say, well, I'm just going to sow yards or I'm just going to plant bushes. He said, and he pushed me into starting retaining walls, and we've done some huge retaining walls. The first one I ever got was on a grading job that he had, and he's like, well, you can do it, I'll help you, we'll figure it out. You'll be able to do this. And I was like, man, I'm not a block mason, I'm not a block, you know, and flat work like pavers, I'm like, you know, that's brick mason stuff. I don't do that, I'm a landscaper. Well, most of landscaping has evolved to hardscaping anymore. He's pushed me to a lot of stuff like that, you know, just do it that way. And I think everybody has got to have a mentor. You've got to have somebody when you've got that customer that's like, can you believe this customer's telling me they're mad about this putting green because the ball doesn't roll fast enough? How do you even figure this out? You know, and you've got to have somebody to vent to like that. And I've got several friends in the business that, you know, we call each other if we've got somebody that's being a pain in the butt or having an issue with a employee or anything like that. But the biggest piece of advice I've ever been given was from one of the same people that told me to probably stick with my job, was from my preacher, and that was he preaches a lot on God's will, finding God's will for your life. And his thing, he preached a message that was, what do you want, how bad do you want it, and what are you going to do with it when you get it? That's something I relate back to this business of, I wanted to do this kind of work, I enjoy doing this work, and what I wanted to do with it, I wanted to be able to have an opportunity that I could go out and witness to a customer, you know, and say, hey, look, I'm a Christian here. This is the way we operate business. It gives me an opportunity in front of the guys that I work with, show the grace of God and everything that goes on with that. And, you know, if you want it bad enough, you know, you're going to work for it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it'll take your time that you probably shouldn't spend too much on it, but that's the best advice I've been given. You know, just following that, because once you get in God's will with doing what you're supposed to be, it's just, I know everybody's heard the saying, you love your job, you've never worked a day in your life. Yeah. I mean, there's some days I guess I haven't loved it as much, but for the most
that's
part,
life.
Most of the time I enjoy getting up and going to work and creating something new, doing something new, and being able to help somebody else out along the way.
Yeah, when you feel like you've found your groove or your purpose or your, like, the thing that you're put on earth to do, it's a blessing. It's not everybody gets to experience that, unfortunately, right? Yeah. And it feels good to be able to contribute something to society, or like, hey, you see your guys, you know, taking pride in what they're doing. That's a privilege.
Well, I mean, that's the biggest thing to it all. I mean, you know, I had an opportunity a couple of years ago to buy a retailer, you know, to go sell landscape product. And at that point in time, you know, I was going through some staffing issues, and I was like, you know what, if they'd pay me enough money, I'd just about do this. And then at that time, I had some guys that really needed a job. And I was like, well, I think I'm going to stick around and stick this out. And I'm glad I did. I mean, it gives me the opportunity to help somebody else and provide them with a wage and provide them in their family. You know, at first when I went out on my own, you know, a lot of people had doubts that, you know, I could even support my own family. Well, now I'm supporting 3 other families. Right. So it's rewarding for the most part.
So when you look ahead, like, what are you envisioning for the next 5 years?
I would like to eventually, just because I know I can't do this forever. I mean, anybody's body won't do it, and I want to try to eventually get get an office admin, you know, get some structure that way. And I would like to get another foreman and possibly run 2 crews and get myself out of the field just a little bit. I don't want to ever get to the size that I'm too big at, but I want to stay pretty small where I still get to have a little bit of say-so in doing the stuff out in the field. But eventually I would like to get out of the field and be able to take a little bit more vacation time.
Where the business can run without you when needed, when you choose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that is systems and processes. Yeah. That is the key to pulling that off. Because without them, well, I don't know. Do you read my Saturday morning emails? Like the one just this past Saturday about the whole, can you make a better burger than McDonald's? Sure I can. Okay, so then why does McDonald's make more money at it than you do? Well, it's like they have a better system that produces the burger, even though if it's an average burger, you know. So, and I think we take pride in what we do, and we often focus on the burger. Right. You know, instead of the system that produces the burger.
And that's one thing that I have tried to do and implement lately is trying to give my guys a little bit more freedom instead of hovering over them like, don't
Sure.
do that, don't do that. I've, you know, like today, like I was telling you earlier, I let them make a mistake, you know, just to say, okay, well, you figured that mistake out, I bet you won't make it again.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a whole lot more effective than you telling them 10 times.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell them 20 times, but if they figure it out on their own, they're like, okay, well, yeah, we'll do it your way next time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to gradually move into that part, and that's part of back to the whole thing of me making things harder on myself, of not putting those systems there to let people have a way of seeing how to do it.
Yeah.
Just that way they don't have to come, hey, what do I got to do now? What do I need to do next?
Yeah, you're the bottleneck of information at
Yeah.
that point. It's like you're the doer or the teller.
Right.
You know, they can't do anything on their own.
Right, and that's where most of our quality comes from. But I want to eventually get it to where it's somebody else is making the quality instead of me.
Yeah. And I think as you focus on that whole ownership and taking pride in what you're doing and autonomy, the things that you're talking about earlier, like that's how you're going to get that. It's fostering that, nurturing that, making that part of your culture.
Right.
If you could go back to the day that you decided to go on your own, what would you do different?
At that point in time, they didn't have SynkedUP.
Yeah.
It would probably been a little harder for me to hack it up and pay for it then, but I think having some kind of way of knowing what I needed to charge at the day one would have been a lot more beneficial. I mean, I had to go do a lot of free work to get my name out there. Having some system like that would have greatly helped me out of the get-go. And that's one part I didn't get to share with you is when I did meet you at H&A, I was sitting there and I think I'd signed up for something else at that point in time to try to help me with my business stuff. And I was there with my fiance now, and we were sitting through it, and I was like, hey, I want to go listen to what this guy's got to say about this. I sat through the whole thing, and you know, you'd mentioned several of the things. I'm like, that's not going to work where I'm at. That's not going to work where I'm at. There's no way people are going to pay me. I'm already hearing that I'm too expensive now, but I'd go in and count it every single year, and they'd say, well, you're not charging enough. I'm like, well, how do I charge more? People are already complaining about I'm too high. Those people were, but those other people that I wasn't getting to, they would have paid me for that.
Yeah, the question asked there is who's telling you you're too expensive?
So, I mean, you know, yeah, I had a guy yesterday, I quoted out a job, he said, that's more than I want to expend. I'm just like, okay, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. I don't waste time on stuff like, I mean, you can have a full schedule of junk, or you can back up, charge what you need to charge, do better work, and still be busy. I mean, I'm just as busy now as I was
It's just
before.
so hard to take that leap.
But I'm just
say no to that, you know, that guy that's like, that's not what I wanted to spend.
right. I mean, and you know, and beforehand, I would have probably been like, man, I can probably knock off about $5,000 or $10,000 off of that. No, absolutely not. I'm not knocking off $1 off of it. I look back at that because I'd signed up, got on board, and I had a quote. I remember getting the material list from my retailer, and it was $17,000. And I was like, man, if I double that, that's still gonna be too high. I said, they're not gonna pay that. I don't know about this. And I took everything, ran it through the SynkedUP app, and it came up where I would have been charging like $20 a square foot for the pavers. I was like 25.
SynkedUP was saying.
Well, I mean, I always go back through it. I mean, I'll
Yeah.
have the number. I'm like, what would that be per square footage? Just in
You
case they
just
have
figure that
somebody.
out, right.
And I'd went through it, and I was like, okay, well, it was pretty ironic how much I was off, because if I would have, I ran the quote like if I were doing it myself, and then I ran it if SynkedUP was, you know, through it, and I was like, okay, that's $5,000 off, a whole year's worth of paying for SynkedUP.
Right.
So.
On a single job.
On the first job. So I was like, okay, well, if I was giving that much up on that job, I wonder how much I was giving up on the job that I'd just done that was twice as big as that. So it was like, okay, well, yeah, you can nickel and dime yourself to death, and all those little $100 here, $200 there, stuff adds up over a period of a year.
Yeah.
You can maybe buy a tilt rotator with that one of these days.
So, yeah, right, exactly. So the one thing that you would do different is not get a tow rotator right on the day one?
I don't know. That's just not. That's a
I'm
whole
just
different.
messing
That's a whole
with you.
different conversation for another day.
SynkedUP, the average customer spends about $5,000 a year, somewhere in that range. Are you saying that you would take that plunge right in the beginning, or how would you approach it?
It just depends on what the workload that someone has. Because, like I said, I think there's a lot of people, they'll land one job and they're like, okay, I'm going out on my own now. I mean, you know, that's not enough to keep you going. I think you definitely need to know what you're charging from the get-go for sure.
And there's ways you can figure that out for free manually.
Yes.
You know, right?
Right.
You know,
I mean, and there's I don't know. The software has helped me greatly in doing what I do. But I mean, like I said, I had a workload already when I came to it.
Sure. So you had revenue to run through.
And I mean, we were way over our head with work, you know. So
can you kind of describe your journey? Like, were you literally looking at what other people were charged? Like, what was your journey and how you were pricing your estimates from day one? Then you did something else. Then you did something else. Well, what did it look like between starting and actually ending up at SynkedUP?
For the longest time, I'd done skid steer work or tractor work, and I would charge $50 an hour. It didn't matter if I had 2 other guys there with me.
Wow.
I was charging for the machine, and I was like, I can't charge for these guys because I thought it was too high. Nobody had ever told me that it was too high. I thought it was too high, and I had people like, well, he's a little expensive for what he does, and I charged like that for a long time, and like retaining walls, you know, one of our salesmen for our retailers, you know, he gets that question all the time. Well, what are people charging? He'll call me, he's like, what are people charging for artificial turf? And I'm like, I can't tell you that because I know what an industry standard is, but I can't tell you what they need to charge for that. That was the information that he's passing on to someone else to go out and do it. Like, well, Jason said you could do it for $9 a square foot. I can go do it for $7 and make money. But somebody that's never done it is probably going to struggle their hind end off, and they're like, oh God, this stinks. Mm-hmm. So that's how we figured out a lot of, like, you know, like retaining wall blocks. I mean, I was like, well, you know, these other guys are charging $30 a block. I'll charge $30 a block. So
I think a metric I like better than what should I be charging, or like what would you charge, is rather than comparing that at a benchmark level, like with your peers or other people in the industry, I like comparing, let's assume you're buying the same materials, you know, let's assume you're doing the same work. What I like to compare is man hours. So like if I'm like, hey, I'm looking at this type of job, I've never done it before, instead of saying, what would you charge, I would want to ask, how many man hours would you bid for this? Now I can take that and apply my hourly rate to it. Right. Maybe I'll fluff it up for, you know, learning, you know.
Because materials. You know,
materials. We're all buying the same thing. I mean, unless, whatever. If you're not, it's obvious, you know. Yeah. It's more of like, the benchmark that I think is actually genuinely helpful is, I've never bid work like this before. How many man hours would it take? I don't care if you're charging $40 an hour, or $150 an hour. That's on you and your math. I know my math, my hourly rate. The only equal here that is like somewhat comparable is how many man hours it's going to take. And even that can vary based on experience, equipment setups. I mean, just take Tussey Landscaping building water features. They can probably build some certain water features in half the man hours that someone that's just cutting their teeth on building them and figuring out the rhythm and how they go together and all that. So, but I still think it's a much closer benchmark to compare yourself or to get advice from than in price itself is.
Exactly. And that's one thing that I've seen a lot of guys make mistakes in, is charging what somebody else would be trying to charge. I mean, because at the end of the day, who's pricing you? We have some jobs that we get that I'm pricing against somebody else, but more than most of the time, it's they want us to do the job.
See, that is key. Like, the sooner you can develop a bit of a reputation to where they're not even price shopping. They are calling you because they want you to do the job. Right. And often, I think in today's age, that's often fueled by social media, honestly.
Absolutely.
They're looking at your social media stuff. They kind of start, they follow you by accident or whatever one day, and they start watching your stuff and they start liking it, and then they start like, well, dude, if I ever do a project, I'm calling this company, whereas, hey, I need a job done, I'm gonna call 3 different companies and at that point, it's a pricing decision. What you want to try to do, this is the way my brain thinks, is I want to distance myself from a who's what price. I want the homeowner to be, or the customer to begin comparing my quote based on how I would do it. The design is a little better. I understand their vision better. I'm asking them what their vision, like their goal is, or their pain, the solution, whatever it is. We're having a conversation that's not even we're not even comparing on price. We're comparing on the value of what I'm delivering.
Well, a lesson that I was given a long time ago was a lot of times people aren't buying your product, they're buying you.
That's right. People do business with people.
I just sold a water feature to a lady. She said, I was going to get another quote. And in this area, it's hard to get quotes on that kind of thing because there's not many people doing it. And she said, I had another guy quote it, and y'all were very similar in price, but you seemed to know more than he did. And you were more enthusiastic and were able to kind of...
Yeah, see? That's what sold it, not the price.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's all in the salesman. I mean, that's the biggest thing of it. And that's where our work in this area is often looked at as that's do-it-yourself work. Anybody can do that. But, you know, it's really a tough business to be in because you have to be a salesman. Yeah. You have to be an HR. You have to be able to do the work. I mean, you know, you're doing everything.
Yeah. I often think like once in your business journey, once you do figure out, okay, how I get to the point where I know what I need to charge, and then you figure out the numbers, to me, the next step in developing your business and scaling it and growing it and making it more stable is sales, the psychology of sales, developing yourself as a salesperson or developing someone as a salesperson in your business, because sales is an art, it's psychology. If you're saying I can't win work because of price, that is, sorry, but it's lazy salesmanship.
Yep.
It's not that.
It's so much easier when you know what you got, what you are selling, and some of the things that I have learned in just how to deal with people on it. You know, we haven't got to the ability yet where we're charging for consultations and things like that. I would eventually love to do that. It's kind of tough in our area because everybody's giving, I mean, 9 out of 10 guys, you look at their truck, it says free quotes, free quotes, free quotes, and everybody wants something free. But once again, I'm not really having to estimate a lot of work against someone else. More than most of the time, I was referred by a friend. They were really happy with what I'd done for them, and you know, they jumped online, saw what we had posted, and hey, we like what you do. Let's come give us a quote. My work isn't. I know there's a lot of guys that do. I'm not bidding against 5 other people.
Yeah. Another thing you brought up, probably halfway through back on this session, like 20 minutes ago, where you were talking about like people were telling you you're too expensive, or like, oh, it's kind of expensive, you know, like that can mess with you. You know, the head trash thing. You're like, well, maybe I am too expensive and all that. But the question to sanity check yourself with is, who is saying I'm too expensive?
Yeah, I get that.
You're just talking to the wrong people. Yeah. There's people that charge 5 times what you charge. How are they doing it? Well, they're working for a clientele, a persona that is not saying that. They value maybe the incredible service, or they value the incredible communication, the professionalism. Like, I could tell you stories all day of Tussie. We would close jobs where Tussie was more than triple what other bids were, and Tussie would still win the job. Why? Because again, it's not on price.
Right.
I'm not trying to say that doesn't exist. Yes, there are people that will strictly make a price-based decision. For me, I just don't want to work for them. Right.
And that's the thing of it. I think that's a misconception in our industry too, is that everybody wants to do nice work. Everybody wants to do the high-end stuff.
Yeah.
But like I mentioned from the get-go, some of my favorite jobs that we do are those quick, you know, you go to a 1979 ranch house and tear out the shrubs and put new bushes in. You got a customer that's over the top, gives you no trouble whatsoever. The biggest risk you have is it getting dry and you have a bush die and you have to replace a bush. We've made a really good profit in doing that. At the end of the day, I can go price a $60,000 patio and it takes us 6 days to do it. Or I can go do a couple of those jobs in a week and you still make the same $60,000. So, I mean, in the same sense, you got to know where you're working at, but everybody likes to work for the high-end stuff.
You know, the one thing about the little 1-day, 2-day jobs, you're right. They can be in and out. If you're set up for them, they can be really good. But the logistics.
That's another key.
The logistics is a key. You got to be prepared.
And that's probably one reason I like those jobs a little bit better, because when those jobs come along, I put one of the other guys on the track hoe and I'm in the dump truck hauling stuff off and bringing stuff back, and I'm doing all logistics, and all I got to do is drive a truck. And that's maybe
gives you an opportunity for the crew to kind of maybe take a little ownership of the actual project.
And then most of the time I can leave them with it, and they're great with that. And it still works out good. But
I would always give Matt a hard time. You know, he's doing these big $250,000 projects, and I'm doing these like 3 to 5 day jobs or 1 day jobs even that are an hour away. And all that has to happen is a pull cord breaks on your paver saw and you're done. You know? Whereas Matt, he can completely forget to take his fuel along that day. Just get it tomorrow, you know, big deal. Work on something else. It's just like, I was just joking with him. As a foreman or as a crew leader, the small jobs are actually harder.
Oh yeah, you got to make every
move.
That's something that I was always taught playing baseball when I was a kid, you know, is base hits win ball games.
That's right.
You know, if just what we done in sales last year off of small stuff, I mean, I'll take it every day.
Sure. Here's another thing I would caution about small jobs is, man, protect your calendar like a tiger. What I mean is, if you take a 2-day job and say 20% of the time it bleeds over into a 3-day job, but you bid it as a 2-day job, that is expensive. That will rob your profit. And even in job costing, it can be a little invisible, because maybe all that happened is you went 10 hours over. Not that big of a deal, but it cost you an entire day on your calendar to produce work, and it robbed you from the ability to being fully engaged in a profitable job for the next day.
And that's one thing. I like to have several big jobs and what I call filler work.
Yep.
You know, those
yeah, they're nice to
jobs.
do that. Yeah.
That way, if it's coming up and it's like, okay, well, we wrap this up on Wednesday. We got Thursday and Friday to make a week of it. I don't want to go start another big job. Let's go knock this little job out.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've just tried to stack the schedule with stuff like that.
It's nice to have a mix for that reason, just to be efficient with your schedule.
For sure.
Yeah.
But then again, it's nice to have those big jobs whenever we get bad weather and you want to be camped out on something for a little while.
Yeah.
Works out a little bit better that way too.
You ready to go show me your waterfall that you built?
Yeah, we can take a look at it.
And then what restaurant are we going to tonight?
Probably McDonald's. You got me thinking about that cheeseburger. You know, if you really think about that with the burger, you know, you don't want to be the McDonald's. You need to be like the Five Guys or the Whataburger that does a little bit better than McDonald's.
I'll drop you off and we'll go find something.
I got you.
Any final thoughts for anybody that's listening to this? Think of the Jason from 2016 that, you know, any final words you want to leave the listeners with?
You can do anything you set your mind to. Thing that I often say to my guys when they're like, well, we can't do this or that can't be done, I always refer back to, we put a man on the moon, we can do anything.
It's kind of true.
You know, you'll figure it out. Just figuring it out is the hard part sometimes. Because I look back on some of the struggles that we've had of things that are like, gosh, what do I do? I would go back and take that struggle now because something else is harder. You
look ahead, like we were talking about earlier, like look at Richard Carroll and the projects they're doing and all that, and like, oh, maybe I'd love to be there one day. Or we always look forward and be like, I'd love to be there one day. It never gets easier. You just become a person that can deal with hard better.
Yep. You just become a better sailor out there in the storms of life.
Yeah. Well, Jason, thanks again for being a guest on the podcast and for having us in your home.
Anytime.
It's pretty awesome to come down and like this is. I tell people this is one of my favorite things I get to do is come down and actually see the actual boots on the ground results of what it is we're trying to do at SynkedUP. And it also is like I always come home from these trips feeling invigorated and inspired and refreshed and ready to grind. You know, thanks for everything.
No problem. Thank you for all the help you guys have given us.
Absolutely. It's a privilege and an honor to be a part of your journey, and I can't wait to be part of your growth for many years to come.
Good deal. Thank you.
Cheers.